How do we actually make sense of the world around us? I mean, from our families to our economies, from biology to business, we're all constantly trying to figure out how things work and why they change. But are the mental tools we're using really up for the job?
Here's a thought. Every single decision you make, every action you take, is based on a model. Not a computer model, but a model you carry around in your head. You've got one for how your company works, how your city is run, even for how a simple conversation is going to go. And according to system dynamics pioneer Forrester, these mental models are the bedrock of everything we do.
So, if our mental models are so important, how do we make them better? Well, that's exactly where system dynamics comes in. It's a whole field designed to help us really grasp why things change over time. And in this explainer, we are going to dive right into its core principles.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle why our own mental models can be, well, pretty unreliable. Then, we're going to break down any system you can think of into its two most basic parts and see how they create change. We'll look at why our gut feelings so often fail us in complex situations, and we've got a great case study for that. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see how this offers a whole new way of thinking. Let's jump in.
All right, first things first. Let's talk about our unreliable mental models and that huge gap between what we think will happen and what actually does.
This quote from Forrester really hits the nail on the head. See, our minds are incredible at storing bits and pieces of information about a system. We know the parts, but when it comes to predicting how all those parts are going to interact with each other over time, our intuition is, as he puts it, entirely unreliable.
So if our brains can't just intuit their way through complexity, where do we even begin? Well, we start by simplifying. Forrester said that any system, no matter how complicated it seems, is really built from just two fundamental components.
The first of these is called a level, or what you might know as a stock. It's just an accumulation of something. Think of it like a snapshot of the system at one moment in time. It's the amount of water in a bathtub, the population of a city, or even something you can't touch, like a person's reputation.
And the second component is the rate, or the flow. This is the action part. It's the thing that makes a level go up or down. So it's the water pouring from the faucet into the tub. It's the birth and death rates that change a population. It's the good deeds that build up that reputation. A level can only change because of a rate.
A perfect analogy for this is a company's financial report. A balance sheet, that shows the levels, the company's assets, its cash, its debts, all at one specific point in time. The profit and loss statement, that shows the rates, the revenue and expenses over a whole quarter that made those levels change. And that's it. There is no third page. Every system is just made of these two parts. Okay, so we've got our building blocks, levels and rates. But just having them isn't enough. The real magic, and frankly, all the complexity, comes from how they're connected to each other.
Our default way of thinking, our go-to mental model, is what Forrester called the open-loop impression. It's super simple. We see a problem, we take an action, and we get a result. Done. It's just a straight line from A to B to C.
But reality isn't a straight line, is it? It's a closed loop. We take an action, that action produces a result, but then that result feeds back and changes the system itself. This creates new information, which then influences our next action. There's no real beginning or end. The truth is, we are living inside a giant, messy, interconnected web of feedback loops.
And it is exactly this structure, this world of feedback loops, that makes complex systems behave in ways that are totally counterintuitive. It's why our simple open-loop thinking just completely falls apart.
This is really where our gut feelings can lead us astray. We're used to simple systems, right? You touch a hot stove, you get burned immediately. Cause and effect are right next to each other. But in complex systems, no way. The cause of a problem could be years in the past or miles away. The obvious quick fix that looks great today often makes things way worse down the road. And here's the kicker. More often than not, the true cause of a problem isn't some outside force. It's the delayed feedback from our own past decisions finally coming back to bite us.
To really make this hit home, let's look at one of Forrester's most famous case studies, the urban dynamics model. It's a perfect example of how a really well-intentioned policy can lead to an absolute disaster.
So here's the setup. You have a city struggling with high unemployment, especially for its poorest residents. So what's the logical, compassionate, and totally obvious solution? Build more low-cost housing, of course. But when this exact policy was tested in the urban dynamics computer model, it actually made the unemployment problem worse. So what on earth happened? Why did this seemingly perfect, common-sense solution backfire so badly? Well, the answer isn't in any one part of the policy. It's in the connections. in the feedback loops of the whole urban system.
What happened was the policy created these unintended consequences, these feedback loops. First, this big, shiny housing program acted like a magnet, drawing in even more unemployed people from other areas. So the level of people needing jobs went up. At the exact same time, all that new housing had to be built on land that could have been used for new factories or businesses, so the rate of job creation went down. The system literally fought back against the policy. It increased the number of people looking for jobs while simultaneously reducing the number of jobs available.
This is precisely why we need a new way of thinking. System dynamics gives us the tools to actually draw out our mental models, to make them explicit, and to test them, to see the long-term consequences of our actions before we actually take them.
And you can really see the difference here. On the one hand, our mental models have tons of information, but they just fall apart with dynamic complexity. But a formal system dynamics model, on the other hand, forces us to put our assumptions on the table. It shines a light on where our logic is inconsistent, lets us play out the future, and ultimately, it gives us a way to challenge and actually improve our own understanding.
This quote from a student really captures that core shift in thinking. After seeing one of these complex simulations, they had this amazing aha moment. It's not just one thing happening after another. In a real system, everything is happening all at once. Everything really does depend on everything else.
And that's really the power of system dynamics. It gives us a language and a framework to see the deep interconnectedness of our world. It helps us find the hidden structures that are actually driving what we see on the surface. So, the real question for you is, after seeing these principles in action, what complex system in your own life or your own field of study will you start to see a little differently now?